Guided by the stars, Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon have spent 4 years charting a boundary line through hundreds of miles of unforgiving wilderness.
Vega is coming into view.
Mr. McLean, is that you?
Now, their ultimate goal is finally in sight. But they have ventured deep into the territory of the Lenape tribe, and they are not welcome.
These lands are our lands, and we will defend them with our lives.
Face to face with a band of angry Lenape warriors,
Sir, there's no need to make threats.
Mason and Dixon may have reached the end of the line. The Mason-Dixon Line is famous as the physical and philosophical dividing line between North and South. But the epic story of the men who drew that line remains largely untold.
Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon were unlikely frontiersmen, and that's because the two of them were 18th century nerds.
Charles Mason worked as an astronomer, taking observations of the stars to create charts and tables for navigation.
Dixon, on the other hand, was more of a practical, on-the-ground surveyor.
Sending astronomers and mathematicians into the wilderness may seem improbable to us today, but there was a job to be done. It took men of great skill, knowledge, and learning to do them.
Mason and Dixon had no experience with the grind of the frontier before they came to North America. It had broken many men much tougher than they were. But as Tom would show, they were up to the task.
Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon come to North America from Great Britain with their heads literally in the stars.
Not a cloud in the sky.
Don't speak too soon, my friend. The wind could shift, and we have a long night ahead.
Care to put a wager on that?
Why would we want to profit from something that would make our job more difficult?
Mason and Dixon had just returned from a voyage nearly halfway around the world to observe where Venus would pass between the Earth and the Sun.
And they are hailed almost as celebrities amongst the kind of scientific community at the time.
Ready.
A little to your left. A little to your right. Yeah, perfect. Yes.
We don't normally imagine people like this becoming the heroes of the frontier, but that's precisely what happens with the two of them. And that's because of a major territorial boundary dispute.
Pennsylvania and Maryland have been arguing over their borders for over 80 years, with each laying claim to a huge swath of territory.
For the people living in this disputed territory, it becomes a little more serious when you have tax collectors from Pennsylvania knocking on your door, and then tax collectors from Maryland the next week asking for money too. So there are very real consequences here. People have died because of this conflict. And if it isn't settled, it's only going to get worse.
The British government creates a border commission to define the boundary once and for all, and they hire Mason and Dixon to survey it.
American surveyors simply didn't have that expertise. So that's when Mason and Dixon came riding in like superheroes and said, yeah, we can do that.
The Mason-Dixon Line isn't just the famous east-west line between Maryland and Pennsylvania. They also have to survey the border between Maryland and Delaware, which was once part of Pennsylvania's territory.
It's a north-south line that goes from the southwest corner of Delaware to the north up toward Pennsylvania. known as the tangent line.
Surveying the line is a massive undertaking, putting Mason and Dixon in charge of a small army. Overseeing everything is the expedition's steward, Moses McLean.
Good news, gentlemen?
We won't know until I finish the calculations, but all signs indicate we are perfectly aligned.
We should be ready to commence survey by tomorrow.
Ah, it means a busy day ahead for me. Not to worry, though. Everything will be shipshape for departure.
Attempts by colonial surveyors to mark the tangent line have all failed, but Mason and Dixon believe they could succeed by letting the stars be their guide.
Mason and Dixon were about to do a geodetical survey. This is a survey where you use the stars as a point of reference.
Please make sure this is very secure. Yes, very good, very good.
To accomplish this, they are employing the most cutting-edge astronomical instruments.
The serious weapon was a zenith sector. And this was a 6-foot-long device that allowed them to look up into the sky, read stars, and determine exactly where they were in terms of latitude. And because it was quite fragile, it had to be protected.
Oh, but you, sir, you had the most important job. Should anything happen to this instrument, this entire expedition is for naught.
Now, Charles, you're putting the fear of God into Mr. Brent here. You know, Mr. McLean only hired the finest crewmen. Our precious cargo's in good hands.
I suppose you're right.
Yes. Oh, but please do be very careful.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen.
Mason and Dixon form something of an odd couple. Mason is more conservative. He's a family man. He does things by the book.
Dixon, much more man about town. He enjoyed the pleasures of life. You could say he was much less responsible.
But they both have this love of astronomy and mathematics, this desire for perfectionism and precision that make them the perfect team for this job.
The two scientists are eager to begin their grand expedition, but they have little idea what awaits them in the wild.
Bit more. Right there.
Using a star in the constellation Ursa Minor as a reference point, astronomer Mason sets the course for each day's work. And surveyor Dixon lays out the line on the ground.
The standard piece of equipment for surveyors at the time was the Gunter's chain. It was 66 feet long, and 80 chain lengths would be a mile.
Pull it tight. They had to try to keep it as tight as possible as they're measuring from end to end, and they would put a stake in the ground at the end of each chain to measure the next one and the next one and the next one.
After Mason and Dixon marked the line with stakes, workers place stone markers every mile, many of which are still in place today.
Gentlemen, the first of many links.
Let's continue.
One away.
Very good.
One away.
So day after day, they would observe the stars at night and project that line down to the ground and follow a continuously straight line for that 80 miles.
As spring turns into summer, the expedition slowly, meticulously makes its way north, one chain at a time, through both trackless wilderness and small settlements.
Mason and Dixon's expedition was jumping into an area that was already very politically contentious.
Another mile down, my friends. Anyone care to join me in a celebratory lemonade?
There were people who wanted nothing to do with them because their property lines would be shifting between colony to colony, and there's a very good chance they weren't going to like the outcome.
Those gentlemen do not seem in the mood to celebrate.
Do you think they have some sort of grievance to being moved to Pennsylvania?
It wasn't long ago surveyors coming through here were lucky to escape with their lives.
Surely they must know we're impartial servants to the king. Good morrow, sir. Jeremiah Dixon at your service.
So impartial as Mason and Dixon were supposed to be, you have a kind of skepticism about the ability to ever resolve this.
Perhaps it'd be best we be on our way. All right, let's move forward.
Despite the doubts of some locals, Mason and Dixon are on schedule to finish surveying the tangent line by winter.
Quickly.
It's clearly too far for the chain.
But when they hit the Nanticoke River, the expedition grinds to a halt.
They had to find a way to measure across. The Gunther's chain was 66 feet long. They didn't have a 600-foot long Gunther's chain that they could measure across the river.
Do we know what methods our predecessors employed?
They guessed.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, they saw what you saw, so they just guessed, forged ahead.
Mr. McLean, our work is based on mathematics. We will not guess.
Oh, of course not, sir.
Previous surveyors simply guessed at the distance in front of them. But for two men who were modern men of science like Mason and Dixon were, guessing was simply not an option.
So what do you plan to do?
But if they can't come up with a solution, their expedition will go down as one more failed attempt. Astronomer Charles Mason and surveyor Jeremiah Dixon have undertaken a task that has proven impossible for everyone who's attempted it.
It's clearly too far for the chain.
Marking the border between Maryland and Delaware, known as the Tangent Line. But they've already hit an obstacle that could stop them in their tracks, the Nanticoke River.
The problem with the Nanticoke River is that it's wide and deep. It's not something that you can drag chains through.
No hurry, of course. We could break for an early lunch. Plenty of shade beneath those trees.
Oh, wait, the quadrant.
Pardon?
What do you have in mind?
You'll see.
The river is far too wide to measure by the traditional method with their 66-foot-long surveyor's chain.
They took their duties very responsibly, and they knew what had gone wrong before. They knew that they were going to be evaluated by the Royal Society. If they'd made any mistakes, it would have been common knowledge and their careers would have been damaged.
Dixon believes he can use a navigational instrument called Hadley's Quadrant.
Hadley's Quadrant, it was similar to what a sextant would be for a ship captain to use to measure the vertical angles between the star and the horizon.
Normally the Hadley's Quadrant would be used vertically, and what they did was they turned it on its side.
Placing men on the far shore to measure a baseline, they used the Hadley's Quadrant to determine the angles from point to point, enabling them to calculate the distance across the river.
596 feet and 7 inches.
Now we know.
It was an ingenious breakthrough which allowed them to move along through swamps and over rivers and terrain that otherwise other surveyors would have looked at and gone, well, it looks like about 230 feet.
Mason and Dixon's advanced methods are proving themselves so far. But as they push north through the summer and fall, the pressure to hit the bullseye only grows.
Charting the line to reach the tangent point, something that all previous attempts had failed at, is the first real test for Mason and Dixon. It's a test of their methods, and it puts their commitment to perfectionism into play. If they don't do this, there is no Mason-Dixon line to follow.
On November 10th, 1764, the final mile marker of the tangent line is set. The task that many believed to be impossible is complete.
Huzzah! 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 All right, gentlemen, we have much to be proud of, but we must not rest on our laurels. A new challenge awaits come spring.
Tangent line is a significant accomplishment. These are men doing something that had never been done before. So it's a big moment, and it sets them up for an even larger task, moving west.
1765, Mason and Dixon begin stage 2 of their survey, marking the over 200-mile-long border between Pennsylvania and Maryland. It will take Mason and Dixon deep into the wilderness, but due to a recent decree by King George III, their line must end at the Appalachian Mountains.
King George drafted the Proclamation Line of 1763, which said it was illegal for white settlers to pass over the mountains and to settle in Indian country.
But 4 months into the survey, Mason and Dixon are still 100 miles from reaching the Proclamation Line.
The east-west line is a significantly more complicated undertaking than is the tangent line.
One of the biggest challenges is that they have to clear a path through the wilderness before they can measure the line.
So they had a team of axemen working ahead of them and behind them as well, opening the initial passageway and then widening it. All the while, Mason and Dixon are doing incredibly complicated astronomical calculations for every mile they would go.
The expedition is falling behind schedule, and Mason and Dixon are feeling the pressure.
Ah, very good. When you're finished, come find me.
Did you not see this?
Ah, good morrow, gentlemen.
That remains to be seen, Mr. McLean.
The commission is not letting up. They insist we complete our survey by winter.
Winter? The terrain to the west is supposed to be even more treacherous.
The difficult terrain is only one of Mason and Dixon's problems. Their scientific process requires precise calculations based on observations of the stars.
Every time they had to stop to take the observations, they had to hope that the stars were visible. If it was cloudy or raining, they wouldn't be able to make their observations. It just delayed things more and more.
I could put in a request for more men, but...
Our problem isn't one of manpower, Mr. McLean. I have tried to explain to them that to do this job correctly, we must follow the stars. And you cannot hurry the stars, Mr. McLean.
The commissioners that oversaw Mason and Dixon's team made it very clear that time was money, but their calculations had to be precise for any of this to matter. And they weren't willing to sacrifice their professional integrity or their intense commitment to science.
But just as the pressure to speed up grows stronger, the weather takes a dangerous turn.
Seems you won't be in the observatory tonight.
Alas, it's as if the clouds are conspiring against us.
Oh! Guys, in the tents!
Well, that came on quite quickly.
But this is no ordinary storm, and it could turn the entire expedition upside down.
Is that hail?
The instruments, are they protected?
You can only imagine how helpless Mason and Dixon must feel at this point. They are intense. There's enormous chunks of ice falling from the sky, and all of this sophisticated equipment is outside in the elements.
As we all know, hail, glass, not a good combination.
The observatory. It's still intact.
If any of this equipment, especially the zenith telescope, were to be significantly damaged, it's not like there's telescope repairmen out in the middle of the wilderness. It would have been a significant blow to the expedition.
Until I lay my own eyes upon it, I will... Mr. McLean, we were just coming to check on...
The zenith sector. I ran straight here when the heavens started to open. She's fine.
Mason and Dixon catch a lucky break with the weather. The expedition continues west, but they only make it to mile 117 before they are forced to shut down for the winter.
This task is larger than even they could have anticipated. But as much as they now recognize the scale of the task ahead of them, they are confident that when the spring comes, they'll be prepared to finish the job.
5 months later, Mason and Dixon resume the expedition, only to come face to face with the frontier's most daunting obstacle.
Locals call it Sideling Hill.
appears the locals have a sense of humor.
The expedition had learned to deal with trees, they've learned to deal with ravines and valleys, but when they hit Sideling Hill, certainly a mountain, it's going to be physically the greatest obstacle they had faced yet.
There's a narrow gap to the south I can take the wagons through.
But it appears I shall be going mountain climbing.
With a mountain standing in their way, Dixon and the survey crew must confront the most dangerous conditions they've seen yet to keep the survey on course.
The terrain is very difficult. I mean, it's very steep and it's rocky.
Let's tighten that chain.
Oh, be careful.
Fine.
Everything that was a challenge previously was quadrupled, and all the while they had to maintain this astounding accuracy, which was very difficult to do so while maintaining your footing.
On the steep slopes of Sideling Hill, an expedition that began with high hopes seems destined to end in tragedy.
No! Hold it! Help me! Oh, look out below!
While trying to survey the daunting mountain known as Sideling Hill, the Mason-Dixon expedition may suffer its first casualty.
Oh! Morgan! Help me! Stay still, we're coming down! Coming on! Hold on. Hold me! Hold me! All right.
Luckily, no one is hurt, but the danger moving forward remains. For the next 30 miles, they traverse one mountain after another until they reach the very edge of the frontier. On June 14th, 1766, the expedition arrives safely at the foot of Savage Mountain, 165 miles from their starting point.
Gentlemen, would you do us the honors?
Oh, certainly. Ready?
Perhaps I should ask that of you.
Oh, please, Charles. I am a surveyor. I never miss.
Huzzah! Huzzah! Huzzah!
Mason and Dixon are eager to continue, but if they go any further, they would be illegally crossing King George's proclamation line.
At that point, they would be trespassing onto Indian territory, so certainly that could mean that the party could be attacked.
They had not reached the western limits of Pennsylvania and Maryland yet, so they knew that the line extended beyond that.
They do want to finish their job. They don't want to be stopped by politics, so it's frustrating for them to have to pick up at that point and stop.
Despite their frustrations, Mason and Dixon have achieved something once thought impossible. But as they return to Philadelphia, they learn their expedition may not be over yet. After months of negotiations, Mason and Dixon receive permission from the Iroquois Confederacy, also known as the Six Nations, to cross the proclamation line.
The Six Nations are extremely powerful. They are large in number and they claim a lot of territory.
Gentlemen, my name is Charles Mason, and this is my partner, Jeremiah Dixon. And on behalf of His Majesty the King and the colonies of Pennsylvania and Maryland, we welcome you and thank you for allowing us to continue our work.
We are tired from our journey. We must rest.
Of course, of course. Mr. McLean here will send you to your tents.
Part of the agreement was the Six Nations would send guides to accompany the survey crew.
They would provide protection for them as they extended their survey line.
Hugh Crawford, a seasoned frontiersman and interpreter, serves as the liaison between the expedition and the native guides.
Mr. Crawford, you must be tired as well, but could you spare a little moment?
Of course. We need to discuss issues facing the expedition as we move westward.
There is much to discuss.
Though the presence of the guides offers Mason and Dixon a sense of security, it does not guarantee their safety.
While the Iroquois Confederacy claimed to speak for all American Indians west of the Proclamation Line, the reality is that many native tribes resent the authority that the Iroquois claimed to hold over them.
From Savage Mountain, the expedition moves west, each mile giving Mason and Dixon increasing hope they might reach their ultimate goal, Pennsylvania's western border. And though they mark off over 30 miles without attracting the attention of the natives, at mile 199, Mason and Dixon receive an unexpected visit.
Vega is coming into view. Jeremiah.
Sorry, I thought I heard someone coming. Mr. McLean? Mr. McLean, is that you?
Mason and Dixon may have received permission to cross the Proclamation Line.
Jeremiah, what?
Jeremiah, what? But deep in hostile territory, permission has its limits. Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon have led their surveying expedition into the territory of the Lenape people. But their welcome is anything but warm.
Does this belong to you?
Yes.
Yes, it belongs to us.
I found this while I was hunting. You measure this land, you cut down the trees, but it's not your land.
Native peoples in North America often refer to surveyors as practicers of pen and ink witchcraft, because when they saw measurement tools, when they saw these treaties come out, it usually ended with them losing their land. And when they saw Mason and Dixon coming through, they saw nothing but bad news waiting for them.
King crossed the big water, sent those men to mark things. He wants peace. He does not want this land.
The Lenape were fiercely defensive about that land.
And if pushed too far, they were more than willing to fight back, and fight back hard.
I believe you speak the truth. But I will not close my eyes. Be careful when you travel home.
Mason and Dixon's first encounter with the Lenape ends with just a warning, but it's a chilling portent for their expedition.
Now we know we're being watched.
The local tribes were not willing to give us free rein. They were a bit suspicious of our motives. We had to respect those things, and if we didn't, it could be at our peril.
And tensions rise even further when Mason and Dixon decide to split the party in two to keep the expedition on schedule. Half the crew goes back to clear all the trees along the surveyed line, while the rest push deeper into Lenape territory.
The advantage of a smaller group is just that you can potentially move faster through the wilderness, but it also leaves you more vulnerable to attack with fewer men to defend your party.
The departure of half the crew brings a growing sense of foreboding to camp, but no one expects what happens next.
Come on, boy! Get it off him!
In a shocking, tragic accident, two pack horse drivers are struck and killed by a falling tree.
Moses! My goodness. What happened?
Baker and Carpenter. The boys didn't know they were back here.
Make arrangements for the safe transfer of their bodies for proper burial. Immediately.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and I will draft up letters for the next of kin.
Forestry work today is probably one of the most dangerous professions, and you can imagine how much more dangerous it was 200 and 300 years ago.
The tragedy pushes a crew already on edge to the breaking point.
At this point, it's compounding the nerves and anxiety that many people are feeling. They're at the very end of their tether.
Never have I been more relieved to be breaking camp. The men are getting restless.
Indeed. Getting back to work will occupy everyone's minds. And we are so close.
We have a problem.
After the victims' bodies are sent home for burial, Mason and Dixon prepare to continue westward. But their men have had enough of this job, and they won't take one step further. After a warning from the Lenape tribe and 2 tragic deaths, a large contingent of Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon's axemen are refusing to go on.
It has come to our attention that you do not wish to continue in our employ. Now, we are on the verge of achieving something momentous. That you do not seek to see it through is a great disappointment. But we cannot compel you to continue. You are free to go.
Mr. McLean, we'll see to it that you are paid for your service. When you turn in your axe.
Mounting fears of an imminent Lenape attack prompt many of the expedition's axemen to turn back. This is close to the worst-case scenario.
I heard the promotion. It is a significant loss. Our numbers help keep us safe. Going forward, each crew member should have a loaded rifle at the ready.
When you lose that many people, successfully defending yourself becomes almost impossible, and you're left perilously vulnerable.
Will the guides not see this as a sign? Might they possibly follow suit?
These men think for themselves. When they decide they can't go further, it'll be their decision alone, and you will not be able to change their minds. Gentlemen?
Their backs now against the wall, Mason and Dixon's only hope is that their Iroquois guides remain with them.
Ultimately, the expedition can't continue forward without those guides. It's simply going to be impossible from a security point of view.
With the entire expedition now on alert, Mason and Dixon reach Dunkard Creek, less than 30 miles from Pennsylvania's western border. But their guides are getting increasingly nervous.
We'll need to be alert on this next mile. Dunkard's Creek is not far from the Warrior's Path.
Well, that sounds ominous.
Mostly it's a trade route. But for any party seeking to do us harm, crossing it could be seen as an act of aggression.
As they get closer to the Warrior's Path, their guides become more and more anxious about the fact that they are moving into territory that is very hostile.
We'll follow your lead then.
So for the Iroquois that are with them, they know that the most dangerous part of the expedition is still to come.
Despite the potential danger, Mason and Dixon make camp and prepare for several nights of observations.
Oh, such a beautiful night. Makes one feel as if anything is possible. Even something so supposedly impossible as this. Ah, gentlemen, good evening. Come to take in the stars.
Sat in council with my brothers. We have one voice. We will not take one step further.
The Warrior's Path is a line they will not cross. The Lenape have defended their lands with brutal force. They cannot guarantee anyone's safety.
The Iroquois tended to see themselves as above the Lenape in the hierarchy of native tribes, but hierarchies and power structures mean very little when you're outnumbered in your enemy's territory.
I've witnessed some of your discussion earlier today, and it is clear that you didn't take this decision lightly.
But we are so close. Mr. Hendrick, please. Pennsylvania's western border, we could see them from that bluff just there. If we could just...
As the expedition nears the finish line, once again, the Lenape appear with a warning.
Good evening. What brings you here?
I am brother to the king of the Lenape people. I have heard stories of your movement through these lands. Our lands.
Prince Piscatoman is an individual with high standing amongst the Lenape who has had many, many interactions with the British, and this is going to make him extremely suspicious of what's happening during Mason and Dixon's expedition.
This expedition has an agreement with the Six Nations. Mr. Hendrick can explain.
I know about the agreement. The Six Nations do not speak for me. These lands are not theirs, no, not yours. These lands are ours, and we will defend them with our lives.
After years of struggle, Mason and Dixon have almost reached their goal.
Sir, there's no need to make threats.
But continuing their mission could mean their deaths. Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon's expedition has brought them into the lands of the Lenape people.
Sir, there's no need to make threats.
But now, the Lenape Prince Piscatoman has come to them with a warning. Go no further.
It is you who threatens us. So you are warned.
We are here only to mark a border between two colonies on orders from our king. We are not here to take your lands.
When borders are respected, peace can grow. I have long hoped to make peace with your king. But clearly, that day is not yet upon us.
The end really sinks in for Mason and Dixon when they meet Piscatoman. The pain in that man's eyes, the sincerity of his statement, really convinces Mason and Dixon that this situation is still very raw.
I thank you for respecting this boundary.
Understood.
You can imagine Mason and Dixon's mindset at this point. So close, yet so far. What sacrifice are you willing to make to achieve your goal?
Science is important, but they do want to get out of there with their lives.
Confronted with the words of Piscatoman, Mason and Dixon know their mission has finally come to an end. With one final marker, Mason and Dixon bring an endpoint to their historic line and their own epic journey.
"233 miles, 17 chains, and 48 links. Not a single link was easy, especially these final few. But we did our job with precision and professionalism.
And with honor. God bless each and every one of you.
Huzzah! Huzzah! Huzzah!
Though Mason and Dixon had hoped to survey the line all the way to Pennsylvania's western border, they realize how much they have truly accomplished.
It was one of the greatest surveying feats of that century and probably during the following century, and the accuracy was incredible with all the hardships they had to overcome.
Modern surveyors have marveled at how simply stunning their achievement was. There had to be just a sense of immense accomplishment on their part.
Thanks to them, the border that caused so much trouble for so many years will be indisputable.
May this boundary bring order.
Its political significance settling this long-standing conflict between Pennsylvania and Maryland is crucial to the colonies moving forward.
We did good work, Charles.
And lived to tell the tale.
The winds could shift, and we have a long journey ahead of us.
Mason and Dixon, these two Englishmen, were really laying the groundwork for the future development of the West.
In 1768, 5 years after they arrived in America, Mason and Dixon set out to return home to England. But over the next century, their pioneering work will be overshadowed by what it comes to represent.
From the mid-1800s up to the present day, the Mason-Dixon Line means something very different. It's not simply the boundary between two American colonies. It's the boundary between North and South. But that shouldn't distract us from what the Mason-Dixon expedition was. It's a remarkable scientific achievement, some would say on par with the moon landing, and should be recognized as such. In the end, the Mason and Dixon story was really a story of perseverance.
There's never been anything like it in the history of North America.
Vega is coming into view.
Our technology that we have today is built on the work that Mason and Dixon did. Their understanding and accomplishments helped us to understand the shape of the Earth, and we built upon that work that they did.
Not only are they making a scientific achievement, it was also a social achievement. They were doing a technical job, but that job affected people's lives in a real way.
They created a story that had not been told before. They created this benchmark for what was possible. And that, I think, was probably the most amazing thing that they had accomplished.